So, welcome back to another story time, and in this story time, I'm going to be telling you about the time when I was working at Denny's, only for like a day, basically. I kind of basically worked for them for free, which is like so freaking stupid, anyways, honestly. But so what was happening was I was at this homeless shelter for a short period of time of like 6 months or whatever. Somebody got a job at Denny's that wasn't too far away, and so I ended up with one of these people saying, "Yo, come check it out. They're doing job interviews, this and that. They're looking for a few extra people and things like that." And I'm like, okay, cool. Why not? Whoop-de-doo. So I ended up trying it out for a day. The manager was pretty chill in the very beginning and whatever. So he was like looking for somebody for I think like a dishwasher or whatever, because the guy who was telling everybody else about the place and the job basically and looking for people was basically a cook basically and was already pretty decent at cooking anyways. So with that happening already, it was pretty chill for the most part. And so basically, with that happening and everything, I ended up having to get some crappy shoes that had like no tread on them. Walking on the floors in that place is absolutely horrid, because there's like a layer of grease basically on like the whole entire floor of everything. When it came down to like let's say things with dealing with like the plumbing, this and that and other stuff, dude, there are some crazy things about this Denny's that are absolutely worthy of completely being like shut down. The ceiling had a hole in it, so when it rained, it literally rained into the place, which is so crazy. Then, like I was saying, the floor basically had like like a film of like grease and stuff. So if you weren't careful about how you walked on the floor, you could trip and fall. Every single time I tried to submit my application, their computer systems are complete crap. So with me filling out my application online, whenever I submitted the application online, the manager couldn't find me in the system. I was applying through Indeed or whatever you call it, and so every single time I was applying for the store location that I was trying to apply for, it wasn't working correctly, and it was giving me a different store location. And I applied to like 6 different Denny's because this manager still couldn't find my application, and so he was still like letting me like trial out everything and get a feel for everything. Being a dishwasher at Denny's honestly isn't all that difficult. You just have to get like the chunks of food off the plate, and then once you get the chunk of the chunk of the food off the plate, for the most part you can basically just throw it into the dishwasher, and then it uses like all this hot water and cold water and everything and jet streams, and it does everything in like literally 2 or 4 minutes basically, and it just literally jet steams everything basically for the most part. Their sink, they had like 2 sinks basically. They had like one sink with like basically constant hot water running all the time in a certain fashion, while you're actually just getting like the bigger food particulates like off the plates and everything else like that. And then when it came down to dealing with like the drinks and like the cups and stuff, they had like a different system for that basically. And so there was actually a problem with their plumbing where what they were doing was there was something going on with their hot, cold, and water lines where if you didn't turn something a certain way, you could actually end up with the soap being in the water lines for one of the sinks. And it was like super silly and weird and confusing. I have no idea why it was set up like that, but it makes no sense to me at all. It was something that I just couldn't grasp and totally understand, honestly. Another thing, too, was that I once had to carry out all the clean dishes, basically, and literally wearing shoes with no tread because they wanted me to wear shoes that were completely, like, blacked out. And with these being shoes that were supposed to be completely black, and basically the whole idea of being nonchalant or whatever, like they got to be basically all black Skechers, black tread, black cloth, black laces, black everything for some silly reason, black Vans, just everything just very simple and whatever, like non-slip and all that type of stuff basically. So it was having to be very what do you call it, like it had to qualify for being non-slip or whatever. I never got non-slip shoes or whatever. I was only there for like literally like 5 hours. The job, honestly, I could literally say it'd be an easy job for anybody to do. But for this Denny's, it was definitely a weird one. And only with me working there for like a few hours, I already got like this impression of how crummy the place was. I mean, literally, the ceiling had a hole in it, and nobody replaced it. That was some crazy shit. So the hole in the wall, like the hole in like the ceiling, basically, was just like straight up a huge ass hole. And so basically, with that going and then happening, that was like a hole that was behind a divided wall where the cook was working at. And so for the cook, not shortly like later, I eventually later heard about like 2 weeks later, the ceiling just fell in where the cooks were, and I'm like, wow, that's like crazy shit. But then like this one small hole became like a huge hole. This is probably a hole that was the size of if you put two plates side by side by each other. It was literally so huge. You could probably fit you could probably fit yourself if you set up a ladder to just go up and down as if you had like a manhole on top of like the ceiling that was meant for being able to go up and down through. It was basically large enough that you could fit like one or two people through it going up and down. Like it was just like a huge hole, bro. It was just so crazy. I'm like, this is just so like what do you want to call it, unclean or kept up or anything, dude. It was some crazy stuff. Then there was like another idea in duty that like when your shift is off or you're off shift or whatever, you would have to like mop up or whatever after yourself, like, and everybody did that. So at the end of every shift, you would have to be doing like mopping and stuff and whatever, and stuff like that. I ended up not continuing to work there because the boss didn't even like have paperwork on me, and that was pretty crazy. So that was a thing basically. Basically, from what I remember, I think that if you're working there, I believe that you get like free refills on all the drinks and stuff. You get like I think you can possibly get like free breakfast. I don't know. I kind of forget a little bit, but for the most part, it was not an experience I'd ever want to live again. It was like it was pretty crazy too, because I think that there's like this like it's either a law or it's a rule about some of these jobs in general that if you're working them, that like literally like I think the first week of pay, like you don't get paid your first week, and then like that first week of pay you get put into on your first paycheck on like the second week or something, and I'm just like, dang, that like makes no sense to me. So I'm just like, that's kind of crazy, and I'm just like, that makes no sense. But I can understand some of the reason behind some of it. Maybe I don't know. There was also too like another crazy moment that I kind of observed a little bit. But there was a time when I was examining how the manager was supposed to be like counting the money and being the cash register and stuff. And so I was kind of like filling up the ice for the ice machine or whatever for like the drinks and stuff. And so I was like also too like I was just doing what I was doing, and I was just kind of like, this isn't the best experience ever. I was like probably 3 hours in, and so like the manager was like counting the money and stuff like I was saying. And so as that was happening, I ended up it's like noticing that like on his computer monitors, like he was like supposed to be monitoring the cameras and stuff, but they were all like noise, like black and white noise and stuff, like kind of like all turned off and everything. And so like while he was counting the money, like he had like I think like basically turned off the cameras. And so after he like turned off all the cameras, he was counting all the money, and then he was kind of like he was basically taking the tips, like he was just kind of like just pocketing everything, and like he was just like, I don't know how he didn't notice me like not seeing that, but he ended up like just doing it and just like not like, I guess you could say like what the idea is of just like people not really noticing really. Like he just kind of made like he took enough of like all the tips that he just made it seem as though it was just like a crappy day, as if you didn't get many tips, honestly. And so it was kind of crazy. And like for an example, I think it was also too like explained that with you being a person at Denny's, you also get tips basically in a general sense. So there would be times where with you being a dishwasher person, you would also too have to go out, and then also too, it was also included that if the waitress wasn't picking up the dishes, that I would have to then also to dynamically find out that if there aren't dishes being having to be washed, that I would have to then go out and search and see if there is any. So that was kind of crazy to think about too. But yeah, I mean, it was like, I don't know, like this job of like working at Denny's, it just really like seems scummy and stupid. I didn't say anything about like the whole manager like siphoning money type of stuff. I didn't really notice that or really care or know who to talk about, because I'm just like, damn, that's some crazy shit to think about. But I mean, eventually after I think that he stopped like counting the money, he like turned the cameras back on or whatever, and then they were back on surveillance. I'm just like, wow, that's some crazy stuff. But yeah, so I think he kind of wanted to hire me just because he needed help in the place and whatever. But like he was just telling me that he could never find my application. I'm just like, okay, whatever. One of the moments of when I was being there for the day was I was like carrying all those dishes and stuff, and with the like grime on the floor and like how greasy it kind of was, and me basically like I was having like wear these crappy Vans that like literally had like no like soles on them, like no grip or anything, dude. I was just having to like basically use like my bare ass feet to just hope I didn't fall on my face. Like there was a moment where I almost did, and dude, like I could literally just fall on my ass with like all these dishes and everything, and then like I just didn't know what to have to deal with, dude. It was so crazy. I did have like this waterproof type of apron on and whatever, so I wouldn't have that big of a deal of whatever. But I felt like I was basically carrying anywhere from like probably 40 to 50 pounds worth of dishes, and that would have just been like a crazy mess and everything. But if I actually kind of had hurt myself or something, then I could have, then later I think like I could have like sued them or something, because then also too I didn't have paperwork on me. And like I think that because if I signed the paperwork, I think I would have been like, I don't know what you would call the word, like kind of waving off having to like whatever the word is with trying to like have like a waiver that okay, you understand that like if you get hurt or something, then you know you can't sue us or something silly or weird. So because I hadn't like actually signed that paperwork for that specific location and the manager couldn't really find the paperwork, that like basically I just shouldn't have been working at all that day, and I shouldn't have been doing any like labor at all if there wasn't any paperwork basically from the beginning. So I was kind of like, I don't even know why I'm doing this, but you know, I just wanted to like feel out the experience or whatever a little bit. It wasn't bad, but it was just kind of something to just kind of like check out for a little bit. It honestly wasn't bad at all, honestly, but it's something that is something that's kind of crazy for the most part. And there are some things to where I have heard things from the buddy that was the cook that like there would be like your typical like roaches and like little insects running around in the kitchen and stuff, and I'm just like, oh my god, like what a basic like kitchen nightmare basically, because it was just honestly like so crazy and scary to think about shit like that. And I mean, it was even more scarier with if you had to like rinse out the drinks and stuff, that you know sometimes the soap could end up into the water and you wouldn't even know it, and you think you're just rinsing the dishes off. And while you're like rinsing the dishes off, like you know, you basically could just be reapplying soap to the dishes and then thinking that they're rinsed and stuff. Dude, it's some crazy stuff. So that's kind of where that was at. They didn't even really give us gloves or anything for doing it, and I was kind of like the only person like kind of like doing all the dishwashing stuff. There was like this older guy that was showing me everything and all that type of stuff, and he'd been doing it for like, I don't know, close to like I think like 10 years or something roughly. But he was kind of at a point where he was kind of at like, he was kind of like I think like close to like a year or two. I don't know, not a year or two, but he was kind of like, I think it was like a month actually. Like he was kind of at like a month until he had to like retire. So he was really trying to like find something else to like do and stuff like that. So he just been doing Denny's for so long and whatever, and it was just like pretty crazy. So I don't know. That was my experience of Denny's. Honestly, it's something that it really is something that is it's honestly a horror story, but I thought I should share some of it because it's pretty crazy stuff. And Denny's may seem like a great place sometimes to some people, but when you honestly think about it and you actually think about what it is and what it's like to be working there, it's honestly not a super great place to be at. So, or eat at, or whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of all I got for you today. It was kind of like that quick rundown of Denny's and what it was like to kind of be there for like a day, basically. I can't tell you what it's like being there for like a week necessarily, because I wasn't there, obviously, there for a week. But I basically had enough with just it being like one day to tell you a lot. So that's kind of what that was like, and it was quite the experience.